things can get lost in translation when you're just talking through them verbally, right? But when you're using that power of visualization to be able to get everyone on the same page and align, it really helps understand what is going on in the system, where things are sitting, how they interface with other areas of the building. And that gives you a much more people-focused design.
That's really what it's all about, is inspiring each other. Like, look what you can do. Look at, you don't have to look at a 2D layout anymore. You can really see what almost looks like reality to help your customers envision their futures. Imagine the new.
Hello, and welcome to Speaking of Supply Chain, where we explore trends, current events, and innovations impacting the logistics and supply chain industries. I'm your host, Ellen Wood. Over the past 15 years, technical advancements have significantly transformed the design and optimization of production and distribution facilities. System design has become a pivotal tool, enabling manufacturers to create detailed virtual models of their operations and allows for a comprehensive analysis and optimization of facility layouts before physical implementation. Joining me today to discuss some of the various benefits offered by such system design tools is Rich Trahey, Vice President of Global Sales for Configura. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Ellen. Appreciate being here.
And one of my Miebach colleagues, Claire Konz, who is one of the users of this tool for our organization. Claire, welcome back to the podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks, Ellen.
So before we get started on today's discussion, let's get to know both of you a little bit better. Today's icebreaker question is, what current fact about your life would most impress your 5-year-old self?
Yeah, my 5-year-old self. I think 5-year-old me would be like, what happened? Why aren't you in Major League Baseball? They would be impressed with the letdown of that I'm not starting for the Detroit Tigers, or maybe even retired by now. So that might be like that one first impression. And then when 5-year-old me got over that, they would be like, you've been to what countries? Brazil, Japan, Europe, like that whole world, right? Like, I never imagined all the travel that modern business takes you to. So I think 5-year-old me would say, wow, did not expect to travel the world and see so many different industries in the meantime.
What about you, Claire?
For me, 5-year-old Claire was very set on being an engineer and going to Purdue. So very glad we achieved those things. But I think the thing that 5-year-old me would be most impressed about is the fact that I have a golden retriever.
I think my 5-year-old self also had, similarly low expectations for adult me. I mean, I never had really that dream that I wanted to achieve. I had a lot of things I wanted to do with my life. So it wasn't like a singular career goal that, if I missed it, if I'm not a professional athlete, that I would be disappointed. I think number one, my 5-year-old self would be super impressed that I have a minivan, because when I was a kid, those were the ultimate in cool, because you could fit all of your friends inside. So, adult me is less enthused about that, but, 5-year-old me would have been super impressed. And the other thing is, when I grew up, I had a single-story house, and now I have a house with 2 stories. And so stairs would have impressed 5-year-old me. Like that was
big deal.
That was, you've made it. You've got a big enough house. You need 2 stories.
Yeah.
And again, adult me, less enthused. It's like, I have to carry laundry up and down. Come on.
Now that you mention it, we built a little bike track in our backyard, a little bike loop. 5-year-old me would be blown away with a couple of jumps that we built back there. So yes, that is a good perspective.
Let's get into our discussion for today, which is talking about system design tools, and specifically the Configura tool, obviously. So some of the things that we had discussed, so we've already had a conversation earlier today about some of the things that the tool can do, and we talked with our team, and it was a great informational exchange. But for our listeners out there who are interested in what this tool's capabilities are, some of the things that we talked about very high level that the tool can, benefits that it can provide, risk reduction, cost efficiency, enhanced decision making, obviously, but also sustainability and just some benefits of 3D design. So let's start at the beginning, which is risk reduction. That's the buzzword on everybody's mind right now. Everyone wants to reduce the risk to their operations, because a few years ago, we all remembered it. We've beat it, to death since then, but risks happen, and there are frequently interruptions, disruptions to the supply chain and to logistics. What kind of risk are we able to reduce using these particular tools when it comes to designing new facilities or designing changes to existing facilities?
Yeah, I'll take a first stab at it. So with a 3D design tool such as CET, which is Configura Extension Technology, there you got two categories of risk, right? Business risk and technical risks. And the technical risks, it can come down to all the different systems that interchange with each other, whether that is the equipment interfacing with the building. So often you have just something as simple as interferences, that I didn't know that I-column was there, or, I didn't know that we had a utility room in that section of the building design. So having spatial design and knowing and being able to plan ahead for those kind of tactical building interferences and that kind of thing. And then you have technical exchanges between the different equipments. And that's one of the reasons we created the extension platform, is different manufacturers can publish their application engineering extensions to the platform. And then users can use those different extensions together to make a system. So those kind of on the technical side, that's a big, huge reduction in errors that you can see the real world engineering in a very early stage of the concept. I'll come back to business and maybe let Claire talk a little bit about the technical risk management that comes with it.
Yeah, I think for me, and when it comes to risk management, you also pull in some of those other things you talked about, where you're looking at people-centered design and seeing how can we put together this design in a way that makes sense, right? So not only are you eliminating actual physical risks, such as like I-column interference or making sure there's an egress path somewhere, but you're also looking at, this design doesn't quite make sense in this space, or we can make this longer, or we actually don't have as much space for this racking, this ASRS, something like that, as we thought we did. And so one of the things that has been a huge benefit for us using Configura CET as our 3D design tool has been the ability to sort of have this immersive experience and see, this fits here, this doesn't fit here, you run into a wall here, there's actually not quite enough space for a staging lane here. And being able to then put those different pieces together in a way that kind of comes and brings it to life.
I'm going to expand on that a bit. So earlier we were talking about alternative designs. So one business risk, right, is that you come up with a design, and the design is right, but maybe it wasn't the right design. So like your technical risks are there's no technical risk, everything works, but it's not the best possible design. And that you could call a business risk, that like, hey, dang, we launched this whole building, but oops, we picked the wrong design. So a business risk is that you end up with the wrong design because you didn't consider all the alternatives. And maybe that was because of time, the time that it takes to really weigh all the alternatives, or you didn't have the framework set up with your customer to be able to explore all those. I know I've been in this situation where we were in crunch time, and we were, as an integrator, went through 7 different scenarios, and we picked the best one and put it forward. Weren't able to really show those different scenarios to the customer, really involve them, all the stakeholders, in the business decisions, and kind of uncover those things, collaborative design. So there's a real business risk there that's very hard to articulate or write down in a spreadsheet, but that's a risk that you picked the wrong design in the big picture. So a tool like this that helps you visualize and immerse yourself in the design and really see the big picture and see quickly between different alternatives, both the technology and the costs, help you make the right choice.
I had a very recent client that actually we were talking about all the different ways they could expand the capacity of their building. And they were like, okay, well, can you show us? What does it look like if we add a mezzanine? What does it look like if we change this, that, or the other thing about this design? And we could actually show them.
Well, and one thing you mentioned a minute ago, Rich, was that other suppliers, so the suppliers of these material handling solutions are able to, put their specs into the Configura CET. And so you can choose different potential solutions to put into the design. Is that eliminating some of this risk, because you can look between vendors to see which exact solution is going to fit a little bit better, or which exact, if there happens to be a preference on suppliers or vendors that you're working with, that you can switch those out very easily and understand how that design can alter even in those minuscule ways.
Yeah, I think in the big ways, conceptually, you might have technologies that are the heart of the solution, and you can speed up your conceptual design with, let's say there's this centerpiece of technology that changes the rest of the solution, and then be able to set up an alternative with the centerpiece of technology that maybe is the engine of the solution. And what's great about with the extension technology is you're doing that with real manufacturers' application data. If you're an integrator, for example, or a consultant such as Miebach, so you can weigh knowing that this is real engineering application data, not just whiteboard sketching, but real technology. For sure, that's going to reduce a lot of risk and speed things up when you go downstream and start adding the fidelity to the design.
And that certainly increases the design's flexibility, because when you go to a particular vendor and say, I'm interested in your solution, they, obviously will want to have some sort of demonstration or, proposal of what it would look like in your facility, but they have their data. They don't have their competitors', design data that they can put in there. And this allows you to really, we were doing a puzzle earlier, and you can switch out the pieces and you can see how things are going to fit together with a lot more flexibility, because you have all of those different pieces available inside the software, inside the tool.
Yeah, what a great analogy, right? Because different people have different ideas. Like, hey, maybe this subsystem could be this, maybe this could be that. And everybody's kind of being able to freewheel. I've been in a lot of design reviews where that's a lot of fun, right? And people get engaged, and you get the positive energy of, well, what if we did this? And what if, and what if, and what if? That can make for a very positive design, and then very quickly step back and see the big picture. And with that alternative management, then weigh the different alternatives against each other, like you said, with real manufacturers' equipment technology inside the solution.
Well, and that brings us into the next part of this, which was the cost efficiency. That's going to be one of those big factors that organizations are concerned about when coming into a material handling purchase and integration, is the cost. So how does this particular tool help in terms of, making sure that these solutions are as efficient for the finance department?
Yeah, so you have two aspects to that. One is the investment itself, which is going to be the largest, cost efficiency you're working on, is how to make sure the design is cost efficient. And what this tool enables you to do is not only like a traditional CAD, see the design, but this CAD, or in this case, model, has all the cost elements associated to those elements. So if it's a manufacturer, if you are approved by that manufacturer to have the cost information, manufacturers control that. They'll share that in the model, and then you can get live feedback on the cost of that design. And that, when we were talking earlier about comparing alternatives, not only are you comparing, okay, how many operators does this take? How much room does this take? How efficient will the flow be? But you can live see the cost impact of those designs as well. And the way we've done that in the past, that's really nice, is to set up functional areas and even see and structure your bill of material categorically to say this functional area has this much investment, this functional area has this much investment. And then you literally can move your investment around within a design and say, like, okay, if we're doing a design to cost scenario where I'm trying to hit this X number of millions of dollars. Let's move that money around and see where we can be most efficient and achieve the business goals with that money. So for sure, there's a cost effectiveness as well as a cost efficiency. And then naturally on the efficiency of the design itself, you have downstream gains using CET that if you get your concept right with the original equipment, the ramifications are that it's going to be much more efficient. And many of our major integrators will save 30 to 40% in their engineering phases of the project when they're using our software.
That's pretty significant.
I was just going to, as someone who uses the software, it is incredibly efficient to be able to look at the different alternatives and be able to incorporate costing into them. So we were talking earlier about changing out the heart of the system that you have, right? So if you want to look at a pick mod versus some kind of tote shuttle, you can trade those out and have the different alternatives and have the costs ready for those. We have a lot of clients that request options for different budgets. So they'll say, okay, what's the option if we have this amount of budget versus this amount? And what does that look like? What can we get out of those different budgets? And where does it make sense to spend our money and to have that higher capital investment at first? And then, Rich, you mentioned about the operational investment as well. With 3D design, it's a lot easier to visualize where your people are going and what types of jobs they'll be doing while they're there. So you can visualize where they fit into the system and kind of approximate how many people you'll need to do those different jobs.
What about the way that the systems work together once they're installed? I know we've talked about this in a couple other podcasts where we're talking about, having the right data and having the systems talking to each other and making sure you've got everything mapped and integrated perfectly. And a lot of the times during those integrations with these very technical installations, the biggest cost overrun is in change orders and in delays or things that you didn't anticipate just from the design. Does this help with any of that risk?
Yeah, I think that because of the detail we can get out of doing a 3D design like this, you're definitely managing the change orders that would be needed for the design of the project, right? So some of those more technical things like conveyor interconnections may be a little bit trickier to see just from a model. But when you're talking about the overall concept and where things go and how many racks do you actually need, how many uprights, how many beams, how many different shelving units, all of these different factors that come in like a component type sale, you can get that right much closer by being able to visualize it very clearly and understanding all of the things that go into designing the levels of the racking or the full area of the pick module or something like that.
Yeah, you can really tie together the two conversations. Change management not only is a cost management issue, but it's really a risk management issue. Anytime you have a change in a project, for sure, there's going to be some incremental cost, but the big risk is that go live lit date. Nobody wants to move that. So you have these changes. So you kind of squeeze them in, keep your schedule the same, and there's a big risk there. I would make the venture, most big changes in material handling projects are the material to be handled, right? You're in the middle of a big project. Your customer just happened to close the acquisition of another division. And guess what? We need to now incorporate all those SKUs into the design. So not only do you have, the material to be handled, maybe we have to check all of those things, but also there's some material flow that might need to change. But with CET, you can look at what is the material to be handled. You've defined all of that inside of, let's say, a racking, and you can say, okay, cool, we need to actually change a few of the layers. And there's so many tools inside of CET to make those things efficient, where you also can visualize and talk to your customers about those fast decisions. Okay, you know what? Now it was 72 high. Now we have 96-inch high pallets. So let's change a couple of things in the rack design, quick check the designs visually, make sure everyone's on the same page. There's just a lot of tools to see change when you're moving fast and do that review process, to not only keep the cost in check, but more importantly, manage that risk. Because that's the big fear, is that you're making changes quickly, and the temptation to skip over check steps is there. And the visualization tool helps you communicate with all your stakeholders. Hey, is this the change we're talking about? Okay, let's be clear on scope.
I love that you talked about seeing change quickly, because that is one of the biggest benefits that we have when we're talking to our clients and to our customers, where we're showing them these 3D designs, is they want to be able to understand, what does this actually look like? What does it actually do? And a good example of this is actually racking and those elevations that you have. If you're looking at it on a 2D drawing, you can only see from the top down. So you're just seeing where the racking sits, but it's a lot more difficult, or you have to like seek out and find information in addition to your overhead view to understand that this is 5 levels high or 6 levels high, or there's 72-inch pallets here and 96 here. And so there's a lot of changes there that you just can't see in a 2D overhead view.
Mm. I read a book once on, I think it was all about like how to make really compelling graphs and turn your data into visuals. And I think it was that book that said like 83% of comprehension is visual. So even if you try to communicate something, right, in like a bill of material, whatever, you have to visualize it to really comprehend what's happening. And so much of that, is, okay, it's on the surface, it's visual, but it's our comprehension. And that's how like we're having clear communication and expectation management, is when I can visualize what you're talking about. Not just the equipment, but often also the tool set of being like, here's what your operator is going to do. Here's the process. And we make visual fly-throughs to show you like the life of an order. What a powerful tool that is, to be able to say like, here's your orders coming in the building or your inventory, and here's the life of that order as it walks through. Super powerful tool set to be able to really walk a customer through understanding how they're going to run their operation.
Well, and that is an excellent point when it comes to our next aspect, which is the enhanced decision making. So a lot of people don't have that ability to imagine in their minds when they hear, you're going to have this structure, it's 5 units high or whatever, and 10 units long. They can't perceive that in their space. It's a difficult thing to do, to think in that way. And so this helps that decision making for those who need a little bit more with that design, with that fly through. So what else can it do to help with that decision for those stakeholders?
Yeah, I think we were talking about people-centric design earlier, right, Claire? So why don't you take that away with what you were getting at there?
I think that the example you brought up, Ellen, of just kind of getting everyone on the same page, and what Rich talked about of just understanding and comprehending the same design. I think we've all seen that picture of the tire swing, where there's different iterations of the tire swing based on how it was described to sales versus the engineering team versus what the customer actually wanted. And I think that's a great example of how things can get lost in translation when you're just talking through them verbally, right? But when you're using that power of visualization to be able to get everyone on the same page and align, it really helps understand what is going on in the system, where things are sitting, how they interface with other areas of the building. And that gives you a much more people-focused design.
Yeah, and you can take all the different user personas for a system, right? You have, I'll give 3 examples. The first one is the operators that are on the equipment, right? You can go immerse yourself. You can do it with 3D goggles. You can do it when you're in your design reviews, but really just experiencing like, okay, this is what this person's work environment's going to be, and this is what their operation's going to be. And then, of course, egress is a very big deal to know, like, okay, how are they going to move around within the plant, or how are they going to go on break? How are they going to get out of there if there's a fire drill or a real fire? So the operator and just their work environment. But then when you're further down, typically you don't do this early in the design stages, but later in the design stages, you want to know, what does it take to maintain that equipment? Can I access that motor? Maybe I need to do a slightly different motor mount. Or can I, do the maintenance on that shuttle system? How am I going to get to that? And those are the things that really matter when it comes down to, whether it's Black Friday or Christmas weekend and it's crunch time. Everybody knows that's when uptime matters, because you are cranking that system as hard as you can to get as much throughput as you can. And that's when stuff goes down, and it's most critical to get in there and access it well and fix it. So So those are the reasons why design teams and bring in multi-stakeholders to do those kind of assessments. And it's so much easier in a 3D environment. So making that decision of like, okay, what kind of conveyor should go here? What kind of automation could go here? How much clearance do we need? There's a cost trade-off. We're going to need more building space, or what can we do? So all of those things, those decision points are enhanced. And the third person or user persona I'll throw out there for operating a warehouse is the supervisors. The supervisors become the lifeblood. I've been on lots of tours of warehouses. I'm sure you both have. And, a great tour is done by a supervisor who runs that operation. And I've been on some where like you kind of can't really tell what's going on. And I've been on others where they bring you first to like the control tower, control room. And I love a design when you can design that control tower, control room where you can see the whole operation. Maybe they have their video screens and everything too, but it's set up where you can see the heartbeat of the operation. Typically, like your pick stations are set, your control tower, supervisor tower is there. Maybe there's multiple, but that's a real big deal so that they can make live decisions, see reality, see their videos, see their monitors. But I think that's a real critical piece to any real well-designed warehouse is you've thought through like, where are my line supervisors going to be able to sit and be able to access their people and work with them as a team to clear any kind of issues that come up during the day of an operation.
Well, and that is a great lead into this next point, which is another decision that businesses are facing more and more often is sustainability practices and where they can improve their own sustainability. We've talked about it in a few other episodes where we talk about, upstream and downstream and where that sustainability is going to fall in terms of responsibility. But what can this particular software do that is enabling companies to make more sustainable choices?
Yeah, so that really depends on the manufacturer. Some manufacturers, and we're in multiple different industries with our tools, but our engine is not only a visual design engine, it's a calculation engine. So any calculation you can do, you can do within our software. And some of our manufacturers will do electrical calculations, load calculations within the software. So you can set up your system where you can calculate electrical loads. So you could calculate the amperage draw of equipment, the way that it's configured, and then you could take that into consideration as a design. I'll be honest, like our essentials, which is generic equipment, we don't have that yet integrated. Could be something we look at in the future, but that's certainly something that can be done, and manufacturers can incorporate that data into their metadata for their models so that can be a decision point on how to optimize amperage draw. I know it's kind of something that's very difficult to do early stages, so it's a problem I'm not sure the industry solved, but we're ready for the challenge if there's some manufacturers who are looking to do that.
I think from an overall design perspective, when you are looking at testing, how does a newer, more sustainable solution fit into our building or our design, right? How can we see what it's going to look like before we actually have it? Maybe it's something that's a little bit more innovative or a newer way to apply a solution or a new iteration of how something is built. One thing that comes to mind is that there's a Miebach client that actually has a wooden ASRS. And so being able to see, okay, what does that look like if it's not a conventional material or we're using this new approach to it, and having the power to be able to say, this is what the design is, this is what it looks like, and be able to get into those nitty-gritty details for something that may be a novel concept.
I think I got to follow up with you later on that. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
A wooden ASRS. That sounds really intriguing.
Yeah. It's very cool.
We've heard a lot of these benefits. Claire, what would you consider the main benefit to be using this particular tool? You've talked about many clients that you've served with it and used this as part of your design. So what is the main benefit that you feel, and what are you hearing from your clients?
Mm-hmm. So we touched on this a little bit earlier, but one of the biggest questions we get when we're in this concepting phase is, how does this affect me? right? So from our upper level, the people who are going to be signing the checks, they're saying, okay, how much does it cost, right? Which this tool can help answer that question. And when we're talking to operators and people who are an integral part of the stakeholders for these designs, they want to understand, what does this work environment look like? How is it going to work? How am I going to get from here to here? And what does that mean for my job, right? And so I think the biggest thing this does is using that power of visual communication to be able to answer those questions more intuitively and quickly, because we can walk through the life cycle of a product. We can walk through a workstation and how it's laid out, how it's designed, and we can sort of track all of these materials through the building to understand how it all comes together.
Rich, what's your feedback been from clients or other agencies like Miebach who utilize this particular tool to help their clients?
Yeah, I think there's like the excitement factor, and then there's the business ROI factor. So I'll talk about the excitement factor first. Everybody loves to have a customer engaged in the design process. So I've talked to many customers. I think Miebach, I'll let Claire comment if this is true for you or not, but like their customers all tell them, I'm thinking of different integrators who use our tools, as they love live design sessions. They love to feel like they're part of the design, that like, it's not like, okay, we have a meeting, we talk about some things in PowerPoint, you take down a whole bunch of notes, and then at the end you say like, okay, let's schedule to get back together, and it's probably going to take us a couple weeks to make these changes, right? That's like the not so old school way of doing it. Most people probably still do it that way, as opposed to, let's do a design session and we're changing the design live with them, and they can see the changes happening. Now your customers have their fingerprints on it, and the stakeholders can say like, yeah, I want to see it like that. I want to see it like that. Oh no, that was a mistake. You can save 2, 3, 4 iterations. I mean, really, it's all about engagement and iterative designs. I'm a big believer in like, you shouldn't name that tune in one note. You should iterate, right? To really get a good design. I loved taking an art class when I was much younger, and learning that the masters, like their backgrounds, they would paint over them like 3, 4, 5 times to get them right. And like they've done this with like X-ray analysis, like, whoa, there's 4 paintings there. They didn't get it right the first time, even the masters, right? So I think iteration in design should be something we embrace and we speed up, right? And we get the stakeholders there to see it and speed it up. So I think that's like the exciting part, why people get super excited about CET. That's that part that's flashy. And then the ROI part is the accuracy of exchanging, like, okay, my concept is engineered. So it's the real solution, which means when I go and say like, okay, cool, we're going to go forward with this project, and you then move into your engineering stage, it's accurate. You don't have to re-engineer things, right? It's the real solution. So that's your big ROI benefit. And then there's all kinds of benefits of eliminating errors. Our software connects with ERP. It's got the full bill of material, and that bill of material is often integrated right to order systems. So you really streamline the entire process by making that powerful early stage concept with the real design, and then it flows right into ERP systems, eliminating errors all the way throughout. So that's really on the manufacturer side. That streamlines for everybody. That basically what you're talking about is aligning your stakeholder expectations to what you deliver.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the future of our industry, and that is the workforce and the labor issue that logistics companies are facing all across the country, all around the world. And that is there's a labor shortage, and we're struggling to fill positions. So how is this helping to make these facilities, these warehouses, a more attractive environment to work in? I mean, obviously the people doing the designing find it attractive, but what is it doing for those ground floor operators?
Yeah, I think I'll let Claire talk to how much your customers talk about this issue of turnover. But I think we were talking this morning about a stat from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. It was like and we weren't sure if it was high enough, but they said 49% turnover. So even if you thought about it in a normal business, right? Like I think, a normal business might be 7, 8, 9, 10%. Warehouses have at least 49% turnover. I've talked to people in warehouses where they have like 200% turnover. I've been to warehouses where they were interviewing 100 people that day for warehouse positions, right? There's a warehouse with like 1,000 people, but it's like that indicated to me like they must have a big turnover here. So it's a big topic. And one of the things we advocate for is like, can we all get together and just agree as the warehouse design community, we need to do better. We owe it to those people to make these warehouses more enjoyable to work in. When we're doing cost optimization, let's consider the warehouse staff and the team that's there is like, they got to work here every day. Let's make this place beautiful. What's wrong with that? Why can't we use that language? Let's put beauty into these warehouse designs. They don't have to be all cold and gray and dungeony. Let's put some nice lighting in. Let's consider that like somebody's going to work here for 8, maybe even 10 hours a day. So let's make it a beautiful space. And I think a software like this can make that happen.
Yeah, I think this brings a really great perspective from the interior design side as well, right? Because you have all of the tools right there at your fingertips to be able to apply a lot of those interior design principles and components and things like that to a warehouse, where typically when we're designing a warehouse, we're like, okay, well, what does all the conveyor do? What does all of the robotics do? And all of these different aspects, right? And when we're talking about people, we're more talking about how many people do I need? Where are they going to stand? But being able to then also incorporate what is their job going to be like? What is their day-to-day going to do? And how is that going to feel for them? What is that going to be when they are actually doing the job is a game changer, and being able to reduce that huge turnover that we're talking about.
Yeah, what would the impact be if you went from 49% to 29% or 30% or 10%? Wouldn't that be awesome if we were like, hey, this is a cool place to work. I like it here. This looks and feels right, or whatever. All of those kind of people-centric, like a true people-centric design would take that into consideration.
We were talking earlier about how that could be difficult to quantify the actual impact of that. But OpEx is one of the biggest costs of an operation. It's not just the capital investment, but how much do you have to spend on labor and all of these different things. So being able to reduce the hiring costs and having to retrain people and all of those different aspects that go into bringing in new talent would be huge.
Well, and Claire, you were mentioning earlier a little bit about some of the ergonomics of the work areas and making sure that things are accessible and that, it's not, an inordinate amount of steps from spot A to spot B. And so that not only speaks to the labor workforce that has to be there in those positions, but also the safety of those employees and, the health of those employees that these companies are having to subsidize and control those costs as well.
Mm-hmm. One of the phrases I use a lot when I'm talking about doing 3D design is being able to look at the spatial orientation of everything and how you can sort of position the little camera, the little viewport, so you can be like you're almost in the design, right? And so you get a good understanding of how one thing compares to another. And one of the ways you can do that is by dropping a little person in that is next to a workstation or next to your conveyor or in your pick shelving, things like that, and making sure, okay, this does look like it's a reasonable height for someone to be able to reach up and grab, or this is probably something that someone's going to have to bend down to put all of these different boxes onto the conveyor or something like that. So you can look at the ergonomic aspects of that and try to get those in that sort of golden zone where you're not having to do a ton of bending and stretching and twisting and all of those different ergonomic things that lead to those long-term injuries.
Getting back to just the tool itself and the company, Configura, there was a conference a few months ago that you had, and there was a contest as part of the conference for some of the best video outputs from this tool. So, Rich, talk to us a little bit about how that came about and why the need for a contest or why the desire for a contest.
Oh, great question. So we've had the Experience Conference, which was in October. It'll be in October next year. We hosted that in Grand Rapids. It'll be in Orlando in 2025. So I encourage all the listeners to check that out. You can go to cetexperience.com. But the contest, I think, is about celebrating our users, right? That conference is all about the entire community getting together. And we have many different people that are part of the community, but the heart of it is the users. And our users create such beautiful designs. So it's a user submission contest, and then users vote on each other. It's like, hey, that looks cool. So it's really about inspiring each other. I mean, that's why most conferences exist, to kind of learn from each other and be inspired by each other and encouraged on like, wow, I didn't even know that was possible. How can you do that, right? You want to just open people's minds. So I think the contest is a great way to do that and celebrate the good work that's being done out there. We've had it for quite a while on the commercial interior side of things, and there's some amazing renderings of interior design. And this year we launched the material handling part of the competition, and I was very pleased when I was there to see Claire was the winner of that award, the material handling rendering, and it was inspirational. We had a lot of different submissions and people in that competition, but that's really what it's all about, is inspiring each other. Like, look what you can do. Look at, you don't have to look at a 2D layout anymore. You can really see what almost looks like reality to help your customers envision their futures. Imagine the new, is what we say at Configura.
So Claire, tell us a little bit about your submission.
Yeah, so my submission was of automated pack line, I believe, and kind of the warehousing that was behind it. But I think one of the things that entire conference and that competition in particular really spoke to is that what I submitted was actually one of the first drawings I ever did in Configura. And so just the speed to being able to learn the software and be able to use it and make something that is very visually focused and easy to understand, and something that other people can look at and say, okay, yes, this makes sense. I understand how this system works. I really like how this all comes together in this image, things like that. Because this was voted on by industry peers, right? So being able to do all of that with one of my first drawings ever and have that come together so quickly was really cool. And I think speaks to the ease of use of the software and the people-centric design of Configura in particular.
So now that you've had a little more practice with it, is next year's contest a shoo-in, or do you feel like there's going to be some good competition out there?
I'm hoping we can take some good competition just from Miebach.
That's great.
Well, Rich, it sounds like you are going to have a lot of submissions to review next year. And hopefully our listeners out there are intrigued enough to add to that number.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I love seeing all the different winners or not. Every single one of them was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Because you can go back through and be like, wait, how did you do that? I've never seen that before. And I actually did that with one of the other people that submitted too. So
yeah, that's a great way to utilize the contest, is to highlight some of the things and the capabilities that the tool enables, but also, that mind to mind and meeting of minds with the other users to help. Oh, how'd you do that? Oh, I love this. I want to use that in my next one. And, really building that community of users that help each other get better as the tool evolves and as your user maturity evolves.
Yeah, we actually had a really big uptick this year in our material handling track. So all of the speaking engagements that we had, guest speakers, and I think we struck the balance, right? You're always nervous about asking people to come and talk about their subject matter expertise. Like, okay, nobody wants to share any of their trade secrets, but I think we were able to achieve that, where people were able to really be candid, share their best practice while also keeping the proprietary information proprietary. And it was super encouraging to see so many people sharing with each other. I learned in every single session that I went to. We had a good 7, 8, 9, I think maybe 10 specific material handling tracks. It was really solid.
Awesome. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. A very special thank you to Claire and Rich for all of your insights today. If any of our listeners out there have a suggestion for a topic or would like to be a guest on the show, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact me at podcast@miebach.com at any time. As always, thank you for listening to Speaking of Supply Chain. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on whatever podcast platform you prefer. We're on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify. And be sure to tune in next time.